An airstrike on a hospital in Gaza kills at least 500, fueling more unrest in the already fragile region. Working out who's behind the deadly attack is causing controversy as Palestinians claim it to be an Israeli bombing, while the Israeli military blames Islamic Jihad. This has called off President Biden's trip to Jordan. Eyes are on Beijing, where Chinese President Xi Jinping met his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin at the height of the war in the Middle East to bolster their friendship. Korea's strong exports of environment-friendly vehicles prop up the overall auto exports, which have hit a fresh high during the recent 9 months. It's October 18, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with a tragic hospital explosion and suspected airstrike in Gaza City, which has resulted in the loss of hundreds of lives. Palestinians claim an Israeli bombing, while the Israeli military blames Islamic Jihad. This is fueling more unrest to the already fragile region, while a trip to Jordan by U.S. President Joe Biden has been called off, who landed in Israel today. Our Song Yujin has the latest.
At least 500 people have died following an explosion at the Al-Ali Al-Arabi hospital in central Gaza on Tuesday night. The hospital was crowded with victims of earlier Israeli airstrikes, as well as thousands of displaced people seeking shelter. Most of the victims are known to be women, children, and refugees. The Palestinian Health Ministry says many are still under the rubble, but it's unclear who's responsible for the attack. Palestine says it was an Israeli airstrike, while Israel's military attributes it to a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamist Jihad group. Protests have erupted across the Middle East and North Africa, condemning the deadly attack.
The Palestinian people did not commit a crime. They don't want anything. That is their home. They don't want to leave.
Just now, up of 1,000 casualties, all of them of civilians who were displaced from the north, and they have nowhere to go except to be in the garden and the yard of the hospital. Totally were killed.
This all happened hours before U.S. President Joe Biden headed to Israel on what's seen as a diplomatic mission to help ease tensions in the region and allow much-needed humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. Biden had planned to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and also visit Jordan for a four-way summit with King Abdullah II, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi of Egypt, and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. But Jordan canceled the summit shortly after the hospital bombing. Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi said on Al Jazeera Arabic Wednesday morning that there is no benefit to anyone in holding a summit at this time. Though his trip to Jordan has been called off, White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says Biden intends to speak with the Middle East leaders on his flight back to Washington on Wednesday night. 송유진, Arirang News.
The leaders of China and Russia sat down for talks in Beijing today on the margins of China's Belt and Road Forum at the height of the war in the Middle East. Calling each other close friends, the two touched upon their close diplomatic and economic cooperation. Choi Min-jung brings us up to speed.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin met on Wednesday on the sidelines of the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. The two leaders held a bilateral meeting to strengthen their partnership amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. Putin told Xi that close coordination between the two countries is crucial during difficult times.
With the current difficult conditions, close foreign policy coordination is especially required, which is what we are doing.
The situation between Israel and Gaza is expected to have been one of the key focuses of Wednesday's meeting. Beijing recently criticized Israel for going beyond self-defense, while Moscow called for a humanitarian ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Chinese leader touted Beijing and Moscow's bilateral trade.
Our bilateral trade volume has reached a new record high, and we're constantly moving towards our joint goal of $200 billion.
Xi also highlighted their strong friendship, saying that the two have met 42 times in the past decade. He expressed hopes that China and Russia would contribute to each other's development, the protection of international fairness and justice, and the common development of the world. Also on Wednesday, Xi and Putin attended the opening ceremony of the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, alongside representatives from more than 130 countries. There, Xi said that when China does well, the world will get even better. And calling Xi his dear friend, Putin praised China's initiative to bring the world together. Meanwhile, Xi warned against economic coercion and decoupling, criticizing the West's push to reduce dependency on China's economy.
Viewing others' development as a threat or taking economic interdependence as a risk will not make one's own life any better or speed up one's own development.
This year's conference marks the 10th anniversary of the launch of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to connect China, Central Asia, Africa, and Europe via land and maritime networks to stimulate economic growth. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
South Korean Defense Minister Shin Won-sik says North Korea has nothing to gain by developing nuclear weapons, and continuing to do so will only isolate itself from the international community. At the Seoul Defense Dialogue today, Shin said North Korea was threatening global security by advancing its nuclear weapons and missile capabilities. He added that South Korea was enhancing its own response capabilities while strengthening cooperation with other countries based on the Camp David Declaration. Regarding the war in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas conflict, he said cooperation and solidarity among the international community was urgently needed. The SDD is a high-level multilateral meeting held by the Ministry of National Defense each year to promote peace on the Korean Peninsula and regional security cooperation. Attending an event marking the 78th National Police Day, President Yoon doubled down on his will to protect the vulnerable from vicious crimes. On that note, he vowed to restructure the police. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has promised his support to the nation's police as he called on the agency to be especially tough on crimes targeting the vulnerable, while reorganizing the structure for it to be more centered around public safety.
특히 성폭력, 아동학대, 가정폭력, 스토킹과 같이 약자를 상대로 하는 범죄는 절대 용납되어서는 안 됩니다. 국민들께서 일상에서 범죄의 위협과 두려움을 느끼지 않고 안전하게 사실 수 있도록 모든 역량을 집중해 주시기 바랍니다.
This came as the nation's police will be celebrating its 78th anniversary on Saturday and held the National Police Day ceremony at the former presidential office, Cheongwa-dae, in advance on Wednesday. The ceremony included presidential recognition for the police officers for their achievements, as well as those who have been lost in the line of duty. 31 representatives from other nations' police agencies, as well as international organizations' police departments, attended the anniversary event as well to enhance cooperation. Yoon at the event also repeated his promise to deliver better support to the agency with new equipment, which he has already been promising since the series of random knife attacks in August.
흉악 범죄에 대한 효과적 대응을 위해 방범 장구, 저위험 권총 등 신형 첨단 장구를 신속히 보급할 것입니다.
Police Commissioner Yoon also faced the reality during the ceremony, saying that the anxieties and fears that penetrate the daily lives of the people pose a new challenge to law enforcement, promising to keep communities safe. However, President Yoon didn't forget to cheer on the police as it has come a long way since 78 years ago, mentioning that the arrest rate is around 95% and phishing scams have gone down by 30% on year. He also said the sacrifices will be deservedly compensated. President Yoon, ending his keynote speech, said that a nation's #1 reason for existence is to keep its citizens safe and that he will do his part to support the police's sacrifices. He also urged police officers to never forget this fundamental duty of securing public safety and always strive to be the police of the people. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the trade front, Korea's strong exports of environment-friendly vehicles prop up the overall auto exports, which have hit a fresh high from January to September. In particular, there's been a high demand for green automobiles in North America and the EU. Park Go-nu has the numbers.
South Korea's auto exports hit new highs in the January to September period this year, reaching $52.1 billion on the back of record-high eco-friendly car exports to North America and the EU. According to the Industry Ministry on Wednesday, in the first 9 months of 2023, some $18 billion worth of green automobiles were exported, exceeding the total for 2022, which amounted to $16.1 billion. And with total car exports rising on year for 15 consecutive months in September, an industry ministry official said an even brighter future for outbound shipments is expected. And with this year's figure from January to September surpassing the $38.4 billion recorded for the same period in 2022, the official added, the total value of exports for 2023 is also likely to pass last year's total of $54.1 billion. Production in September dipped slightly on year due to partial strikes within the industry, but has hovered above 300,000 units for 13 consecutive months. The industry ministry expects production to hit at least 400,000 vehicles by the end of 2023 if the trend continues, a figure not seen since 2018. On the domestic front, sales of new cars decreased 4.7% on year in September. Sales of eco-friendly cars increased around 2% from the year before. However, EV sales dropped 34% in September, something the Environment Ministry said was due to an announcement on expanded subsidies, which was set for the 25th of that month. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
The U.S. has put forth new export controls to stop China from getting advanced computer chips. The updated rules are much stricter than earlier ones as they include restrictions on chips with lower performance and ways to prevent circumvention through a third country. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Department of Commerce on Tuesday announced a set of rules to update and strengthen its restrictions on the export of advanced computing semiconductors to China. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security released an update to rules for strengthening export controls after guidelines were published a year ago to restrict China from purchasing and manufacturing high-end chips deemed critical for military advantage. Among the updated rules are notification requirements for the export of certain chips with performance just below the restricted threshold. It also includes new rules to prevent companies from China and other countries of concern from securing controlled chips through their foreign subsidiaries. According to Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, the updates on the measures are set up to increase the effectiveness of U.S. controls and further shut off pathways to evade restrictions. She added that the controls remain Washington's clear focus on military applications and confront the threats to its national security posed by the Chinese government's military-civil fusion strategy. Meanwhile, the Commerce Department also added 13 Chinese companies to its entity list, a list of firms considered to be involved in activities contrary to U.S. national security and foreign policy interests. Tuesday's release noted that foundries producing chips for listed firms will need a Bureau of Industry and Security license before the foundries may send such chips to these entities or parties acting on behalf of these entities. The latest announcement comes after the department issued a rule last week updating general authorizations for South Korean chipmakers Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix to continue supplying their China-based plants with certain U.S. semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And in response, the South Korean government says the new U.S. restrictions on AI chip exports to China will not significantly impact domestic companies with operations there. According to the Trade Ministry on Wednesday, the impact of the U.S. curbs on South Korean companies will be limited, as semiconductors for consumer products such as smartphones will not be subject to them. Samsung and SK hynix were also earlier granted verified end-user status for their semiconductor plants in China, meaning the most equipment can be exported without seeking multiple individual licenses. China's GDP growth in the third quarter of this year exceeded economists' forecasts, reaching 4.9% year-on-year. That's according to China's National Bureau of Statistics on Wednesday. Though the figure is down from 6.3% the quarter before, it is higher than the first quarter of 2023, as there are signs of stabilization. In the recent month, China's central bank has been providing liquidity to its banking system, and there have also been economic stimulus efforts from its government. Also, the country reported a stronger growth in industrial production and retail sales in September from a year before. As the economic growth is stronger than expected, there's a more optimistic outlook for the economy, which could mean Beijing reaches its target of 5% this year. South Korea will start giving a new vaccine for the most recent COVID-19 variant beginning this Thursday. This vaccine, known as XBB 1.5, was specifically developed to target the current XBB variant and will be provided free of charge to all residents until the end of March next year. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, there have been no observed side effects on the immune system when people get both the new COVID-19 and influenza vaccines simultaneously. The agency strongly recommends that individuals over the age of 65 receive the vaccine, as there are concerns about a dual resurgence of COVID-19 and the flu this winter. People between the ages of 12 and 64, regardless of their previous vaccination history, can receive a shot once within the free vaccination period. Prominent pundit on Korean Peninsula affairs, Victor Cha, says South Korea's values are reinforcing democratic values in the world as a global pivotal state. Woo Soo-young sat down with him.
South Korea is now an equal partner of the United States, with the potential to join the Group of 7 nations to cooperate on mounting global security threats and challenges. That's according to Victor Cha, a former US National Security Council Director on Asian Affairs, speaking to Arirang News in Seoul. Amid reports of North Korea increasing weapons exchanges with Moscow, Cha voiced concern that Pyongyang's emboldened posture could make it harder to deter the regime's missile and nuclear ambitions.
The North Koreans were able to do quite well at gaining all the parts it needed for their ICBM program despite very harsh sanctions. So I worry about especially if Russia facilitates it, I worry that the North Koreans will be able to get away with a lot.
He underscored the need for stronger deterrence measures by Seoul, Washington and Tokyo based on their trilateral Camp David agreements to ramp up three-way military measures to deter Pyongyang and mechanisms to jointly address common challenges across the Indo-Pacific region.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea, I think, is an equal partner. It used to be the case that the United States was sort of the senior ally and Japan and Korea were the junior partners. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it all starts with US, Japan, Korea. If that relationship is strong, then I think the United States feels like it's on solid footing, whether it's managing the rise of China or whether it's seeking broader regional architectures in Asia. The US, Japan, Korea relationship is core. It's core to that, based on common security interests, but common values, common norms, these sorts of things.
In this push for freedom, human rights and a rules-based global order, President Yoon last year became the first Korean leader to attend the G7 meeting as a guest nation and was invited again to the Hiroshima summit in May. Cha believes the group of advanced democracies could become a G8 to include South Korea.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, the UN Security Council is not really functional because of China and Russia. which means the United States and others need to seek out a new venue. But I do think, we're at a critical point right now in terms of being able to pull together three allies to move forward to shape the environment in which China will rise, and to work on things like supply chain, countering disinformation, these sorts of things.
With disinformation by state actors shaping biased views on global affairs, Cha also touched upon the role of media outlets in democracies to promote unbiased, accurate content.
Groups like Arirang, Yonhap, others that are sort of news-based, not with a lot of editorializing, if they make themselves available to these countries that are targets of Chinese disinformation, they can dramatically change the, I don't want to say alignment, the color, if you will, of the countries. They would no longer have to listen to Chinese media and populate the media platforms with Chinese content.
Having highlighted Seoul's democratic coming of age and growing soft power in his book co-authored by Ramon Pacheco Pardo, Cha noted how Seoul is taking initiative on areas like global development, health, supply chains and nuclear energy. In its quest to become a global pivotal state, Cha said South Korea has a lot to offer beyond its interests to benefit the world. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
A pattern of unsettled weather will arrive tomorrow, producing nationwide showers. With the rain, conditions will get stuffy and humid for most regions. Morning temperatures will rise significantly by about 7 degrees to 16 degrees Celsius tomorrow. After showers taper off, overall temperatures will take a steep dive, bringing cooler than average temperatures. As for the amount of rainfall, Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces will see 5 to 40 millimeters. Other regions will see relatively less, with about 5 to 20. While showers will taper off for most regions late tomorrow night, parts of the south will see rain continuing into Friday evening. Although these are in the form of occasional showers, unstable atmospheric conditions can lead to thunder and lightning. Rain will start from northern central regions tomorrow. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Busan will be starting off at 16 degrees. Daytime highs in Seoul will get up to 19 degrees, Gwangju 23, Busan will be reaching 24 degrees. After the rain, sunny skies will take over, and this weekend temperatures will plummet significantly with lows of 5 degrees Celsius in Seoul. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session is coming up.
Love
loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. K-animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-animation, befriending children all over the world.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hi, my name is Tamara Mawini. I am Canada's ambassador to the Republic of Korea. I know that Arirang TV and Arirang Media has been very active in sharing around the world the wonders and achievements in Korea, and I really look forward to all their future endeavors and how they will help promote strong media, freedom of expression, journalism, and culture into the future. And Canada's excited to be part of that. Really welcomed Arirang's engagement in our own 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations this year between Canada and Korea, and we look forward to continuing the partnership. Thank you. 감사합니다. Resonating with the world, Arirang.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
everyone, it's Wednesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. The apparent arms transfer between Russia and North Korea. The Washington Post has reported at least 5 round trips between Moscow and Pyongyang since mid-August, which came right after the White House revealed that North Korea shipped more than 1,000 containers of military equipment and munitions in recent weeks. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov paid an official visit to North Korea today, which experts widely expect to be part of preparation for Putin's reciprocal visit to Pyongyang later on. How is the situation developing on the peninsula? For more on this, we have invited Dr. Go Myung-hyun, a senior fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Go, welcome.
It's good to be here.
And we also have Bruce Klinger, senior research fellow from the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Klinger, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Now, Dr. Go, first question. So the White House revealed information on potential arms transfer between Russia and North Korea. And soon after that, the Washington Post did so as well. Could you give us more details on this?
So we believe it's following on the summit that Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un had in Vladivostok last month. North Korea had been widely expected is delivering military assistance to Russia. And it's an enormous quantity of containers have been shipped over to Russia from North Korea. So mentioned in the press, it has been estimated to be 1,000 containers. And we don't exactly know what's contained in these containers, but then the educated guess is that it contains artillery shells to be used in the war in Ukraine. And we know the size of the shells that our Russian military are consuming right now in the Ukrainian theater. So those possibly consist of 122 millimeter and then 152 millimeter caliber artillery shells. So we know the weight, we know the size. So I think the experts have estimated that these containers have at least 300,000 shells. So which sounds like a lot, but then in fact, given the consumption rate, expense rate of the shells right now in the ongoing war in Ukraine, this probably will last half a month maximum. So it means that this is not going to be the last round of military assistance that we're going to see from North Korea. I think we should expect more will be going to Russia from North Korea, probably the same type and similar quantity.
Well, Dr. Go, if I understood it correctly, so this arms transfer between Russia and North Korea, it began even before the Vostochnaya summit, right?
So we have seen evidence of that last year in 22 in December. We have seen such a transshipment of shells. We believe to be artillery shells again, but this time destined for the Wagner group that was headed by the late Prigozhin, who died in a quote-unquote accident in September. So that was the first evidence of North Korea assisting Russia with artillery shells. But this is like the only instance that we have seen before. This is another instance of North Korea supplying Russia with an enormous amount of artillery shells that we believe to be artillery shells. But then it's possible that North Koreans have been assisting Russia with weapons and then other munitions in between. But we don't have a clear evidence of that.
Right, I see. Now, that being said, Mr. Klinger, how might such a shipment of weapons from Pyongyang to Moscow affect the ongoing war in Ukraine, in your opinion?
It certainly enables Russia to continue or perhaps expand its operations against Ukraine. As Dr. Go mentioned, we're uncertain as to what has been transferred from North Korea to Russia. So far, we haven't seen indications that actual weapons are going to Russia. We've seen rail cars and box cars, but it's most likely that it's artillery ammunition or other munitions rather than artillery weapons or tanks or armored vehicles. But the large amount of ammunition that North Korea may have transferred, not only with these recent shipments, but the U.S. also said last year they were transferring large amounts of artillery ammunition, certainly enables Russia to continue the attack on Ukraine.
Right, I see. Now, Dr. Go, I'd like to also tap on North Korea's response to such accusation from Washington. North Korea criticized Japan's move to accelerate its planned acquisition of Tomahawk cruise missiles from the U.S. instead of giving specific comments of this accusation. What was this about the Tomahawk cruise missiles? And could we see the North's such criticism as part of an effort to shift away the attention from
That's exactly what's going on right now. I think this announcement by Japan about purchasing up to 500 Tomahawk cruise missiles have been announced a long time ago. So it's interesting that North Korea is bringing it up right now. Clearly, the intention is to obfuscate what's going on. So North Korea doesn't want. I mean, I think North Korea wants to deny it's helping Russia with the munitions and other weapon systems, possibly. But it's probably big for Russia that North Korea is not confirming this assistance that's taking place. Clearly, if North Korea is Russia, imports weapons or munitions from North Korea, that's in violation of the United Nations Security Council resolution, which Russia itself had agreed to from the very beginning of the North Korean sanctions regime. So I think in a way North Korea is trying to save Russia's face in this case. So that's why they are not commenting on this issue, and they're shifting the focus to the Japan's purchase of long-range strike means, which are the Tomahawk cruise missiles. So this is very interesting logic. We trace a very interesting logic on the part of North Korea. I think North Korea is trying to somehow create a counter-argument to the possible accusation that North Korea is fomenting a war far away from East Asia, in this case in Eastern Europe, by saying that the tension is going up anyways in this region, and that's not because of what North Korea is doing right now. It's because of what other countries, in this case Japan, is doing. So I think this is another political game that North Korea is trying to play.
All right, I see your point. Now, Mr. Klinger, apart from releasing one or two statements or so, North Korea is staying relatively quiet, in my opinion, even when the nuclear-powered USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier had a 5-day visit to the peninsula. Could it be because it is busy preparing for the launch of a military satellite?
Well, North Korea did recently criticize the return of the Reagan to the Korean peninsula and indirectly threatened a nuclear attack. They said that the presence of a nuclear-capable strategic asset could trigger its nuclear law that it passed last year, and that includes preemptive attacks if North Korea feels it is about to be attacked by the U.S. or its allies. Now, no one thinks that they are about to attack South Korea or the USS Reagan, but it's a way of North Korea continuing to try to shift its blame for its actions onto the U.S. or its allies by claiming that the military exercises are a precursor to an attack or ways of the U.S. and its allies preparing for an attack. So it's a way the regime always tries to deflect its blame for its violations of UN resolutions by claiming they're a response to the U.S. or its allies.
Well, then, Mr. Klinger, when do you believe North Korea will be able to launch another spy satellite?
They have had two failed attempts at a military reconnaissance satellite. They've also announced that they will, in some unspecified near-term launch window, launch it again. So we'll have to see. But one of the concerns with the increasing relationship and the strengthening of the relationship between Pyongyang and Moscow is that perhaps Russia would provide technology to enable North Korea to improve not only its launch capabilities, but also the capability or the ability of that reconnaissance satellite to be better, higher resolution satellites.
All right. Well, Dr. Go, staying on the satellite front, the U.S. said that it would monitor closely whether Moscow will provide Pyongyang with the materials it wants to have. Will we be able to see Russia's such support if North Korea launches another spy satellite?
So there will be a time lag between putative Russian transfer technology and North Korea being able to internalize the new technology coming from Russia and then reflecting that on their weapon system also, or in this case, space satellite. So I don't think we're going to see direct evidence of Russian assistance with North Korea's ballistic missile program or the space program for now. But then so it also it's probable that Russia is going to refuse to, not refuse, but then probably prefer other means of assisting North Korea, probably with intangible support. In this case, it will be know-how, how to, for instance, increase the success rate of their space vehicle launches. We know that North Korea have already registered 2 consecutive failures. So it's all eyes are on the third, much anticipated third space vehicle launch, and probably the expectation is huge inside North Korea. So maybe Russia can help North Korea with more, increasing the chance of success with the upcoming third space vehicle launch. But in the long run, I think we're going to probably see steady increase in North Korea's technology, and also as the perfection of their complicated space and military weapon systems. It will be difficult for the outside world to pinpoint exactly whether this reflects the Russian assistance technologically or otherwise. But then I think that's what we're going to see in the medium to long run. Having said that, I think Russia is probably going to use small scale support in the key technology or sort of key components. We know that the North Koreans are very smart, so North Korea have been able to achieve domestic production of some key materials such as high like complex metal alloys, as well as some complicated mechanical systems. But then we know that the North Koreans are falling short when it comes to some key composite materials that involves very advanced composite systems and materials. These are only produced by a handful of countries in the world, and Russia is one of them. So, and then that could be very critical in ensuring success of their ballistic missiles as well as the space vehicles. So it's also actually very small in terms of outlet and in terms of physical sizes. So it'll be very easy for Russia to supply such materials to North Korea without being detected. So I think these are probably one of the few alternatives that Russia probably is seeking right now to return the favor that they just received in terms of military assistance.
All right. Well, we have to wait and see what assistance Russia will give to North Korea. But Mr. Klinger, it is quite certain that Russia and North Korea is strengthening their ties, and we can clearly see that such a trend as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited North Korea today for a 2-day visit. And experts say the chief purpose of Lavrov's visit was to arrange Putin's first official visit to Pyongyang in more than 20 years. How do you see this?
I agree. We've now had the defense minister and the foreign minister go to North Korea, and the defense minister would have discussed the military deal between North Korea and Russia as to not only the ammunition going from North Korea to Russia, but also what Moscow might provide in return. And the foreign minister's visit would be most likely laying the groundwork for a Putin visit. As Dr. Go points out, I think it's unlikely that Russia will provide actual weapons to North Korea because they need them so desperately in their invasion of Ukraine. But it's the technology that people are worried about, and that will be very difficult to discern. But we also have to think of what Russia would provide. Many people have sort of jumped to the conclusion that it could be ICBM technology or nuclear warhead technology, but that might be too high a price to pay for the ammunition that North Korea is providing. So as Dr. Go again pointed out, it could be technology for improving North Korea's capabilities, but without giving actual warhead design or ICBM design technology. But I think we will likely see a visit by Putin in North Korea, and that's yet another sign of the increasing strength of the relationship. And that's very worrisome for South Korea, Japan, and the United States, as well as more globally, because it just shows that the rogue nations are binding together and trying to prevent the impact of sanctions from constraining their military operations or their military improvements.
Right, very concerning indeed. Well, Dr. Go, we cannot leave out China. And so Russian President Putin visited China for an event marking the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. Their meeting, as far as I know, comes after the last one just 7 months ago. What significance did their meeting have?
Well, this is a multilateral meeting. It's a forum for the Belt and Road Initiative and the countries that are participating in this Chinese-led initiative. But then I think it's an important moment for Putin because Putin, there's an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for having committed war crimes in Ukraine. So it's not easy for Putin to travel to other countries right now, whether it's for diplomatic or other purposes. And because it's a multilateral setting, Putin doesn't have to go to different countries. Can only come to Beijing and have the sideline meetings with the leaders of countries from the global south. And this reinforces a message that both the Chinese and the Russians are pushing right now, which is that the world has moved on from this so-called unipolar moment in which the United States is the sole superpower to a multipolar moment or multipolarity in which the countries around the world have equal say in the global affairs. So by implication, it means that the world doesn't have to follow the American diktat. This is a message that China is trying to push very hard through this kind of multilateral forum where it's China, not the United States, that dictates the agenda. And Russia is only happy to play the second fiddle here because just Putin gains exposure to the international media. In a way, normalizes him and normalizes Russian behavior right now. So, and then also he can show that to especially the domestic audience in Russia that despite all the criticism that he's receiving right now for his conduct in Ukraine, there are countries elsewhere that welcomes Russian presence, and that shows to the Russian public that Russia is not as isolated as the Western media, for example, points out. So in that sense, I think it's a very important stage for him because he received the spotlight and also reinforced the message that push back the narrative that the criticism against Russia is in fact dominated by the Western media. It's really Russia is still a relevant power right now.
Right, I think that goes along with the fact that the two leaders actually emphasized how they want to reshape the international order.
Exactly.
Right. Well, Mr. Klinger, China, Russia, and North Korea are solidifying their ties in their own ways. Before we move on to the human rights issue in North Korea, what should South Korea's diplomatic strategy be?
Well, South Korea should continue what it has already been doing, is working closely not only with the United States, but with the global community to highlight the North Korean violations of UN Security Council resolutions, also highlighting North Korean human rights violations, and also raising concerns about the growing relationship between Pyongyang and Moscow. So the diplomacy right now is our greatest strength, and then also trying to maintain the sanctions that have been imposed against North Korea and Russia. So the diplomatic initiative is the strongest, but also the economic aspect is something that should be part of the overall strategy of Seoul as well as Washington and its other diplomatic partners.
All right, I see. So South Korea should keep doing what it has been doing. Right, now, Dr. Go, shifting gears a little bit here. Ending almost 7 years of the post having been vacant, a new U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issue took office last week, and she visited Seoul recently. Why has the post been so vacant for so long, and what can be said about the timing of her taking office?
Well, the Ambassador Julie Turner just visited Korea to discuss the human rights issue. And then, as you pointed out, the position of a special envoy for North Korean human rights for the United States government has been vacant for 7.5 years, which is really shocking because there's legislations, the U.S. Congress, that really put the focus on the North Korean human rights situation, such as the North Korean Human Rights Act. But then, for some reason, it hasn't been able to operationalize because of the vacancy of this position. And in fact, I think we have to do a round of blaming for what happened. But then I think it really reflects the political dysfunction in Washington right now. Because, it took 7 months, I believe, for the Ambassador Julie Turner to be confirmed. But then still, it's not the entire story here because, there's been a huge backlog of ambassadorial nomination and confirmation on the part of the U.S. Senate. But also, it took 2 months for the Biden administration to throw in the Ambassador Turner into the office so that she can actually start working on this issue. So there are two factors going on here. One factor is the dysfunction that we all see right now in Washington, but then also a different factor is the lack of interest, clearly, on the part of the Biden administration. But it's understandable. There are a lot of things going on in the world right now.
Right.
There's the Ukraine war. There's also now we have a new flare-up in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas. So there are, clearly the Biden administration is very occupied right now. But then it doesn't. But then at the same time, it's very unfortunate that this is giving out the impression that the United States is not paying attention to the serious, very grave concern about the North Korean human rights. This is, in fact, a very important moment because clearly North Korea is lifting its border closure that's been in place for at least 3 years. And now we are seeing two things, that clearly, probably we expect the North Koreans to escape from the country, but then at the same time, we are seeing the repatriation of the North Korean refugees who've been arrested by the Chinese government and then being held in prison all this time, but now they are being repatriated back to North Korea because North Korea has lifted the border closure measures. And then we know what happens to these refugees. Once they are repatriated, they are, at least at the best, they are imprisoned for a long time, but sometimes they're subject to torture, even like extrajudicial murder. So in that sense, I think the international community have to come together to denounce this behavior on the part of the Chinese government. So it's late, but then I think we should expect Ambassador Turner to really, hit the ground running, and then address this very immediate and then serious concern about the fate of the North Korean refugees who are being repatriated back to North Korea.
All right. Well, since our Dr. Go already mentioned about the repatriation of North Korean defectors to China, Mr. Klinger, the U.S. Special Envoy spreads concerns as well that China may continue to forcibly send North Korean defectors back home. Are there any measures that can be taken to prevent this?
I think diplomatically we need to raise concerns about the actions that China is taking, which are in violation of international agreements that Beijing has signed. So we should denounce China, not only in the UN Security Council and the broader UN General Assembly, but also publicly and in private diplomatic engagement with Beijing. We should also try to facilitate the escape of North Koreans from their country into China, as well as both government and private organizations' efforts to try to get the escapees, once they're in China, into South Korea or other nations that they may want to go to. So we also need to increase the information operations to get information into North Korea, as to let them know what the conditions are, as well as to let them know that there will be efforts to try to facilitate their escape to South Korea once they get into China.
All right, I see. Now, Dr. Go, I believe this will be our last question. Next year, as we all know, South Korea begins its term as a non-permanent member of UNSC, and we are seeing this as a great opportunity to cooperate with other countries regarding improving North Korea's human rights issues. What could be done? So, for instance, South Korea could sponsor resolutions in the Security Council to condemn and then bring attention to condemn North Korean human rights violations, as well as bring attention to this kind of crisis that we are seeing unfolding along the border between China and North Korea. For instance, we can condemn China for its repatriation of the North Korean refugees. But at the same time, I think despite this high-profile position for South Korea that we expect to have next year, clearly we have a dysfunction in the Security Council right now. But then I think South Korea could use this position as a bully pulpit in a way to name and shame those responsible for the continuation of this violation of North Korean human rights. All right, I see. Well, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Dr. Go, for your time and insights.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Klinger, for your time and insights as well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.